2017 was a crazy year for games. There were so many titles that people still love even 3 years later, and one of the most popular games that came out in 2017 actually is getting a follow-up in 2020. And as many of you who follow this channel may know, I am a huge fan of this series, and when I found out that the developer was working with Koei Tecmo to make a Warriors-like spin-off follow-up to this title, I could not have been happier. Now, you may be saying, Spencer, what are you talking about? Persona 5 Scramble / Strikers is still not officially announced in the West because we're incompetent and marketing just doesn't make sense in this culture or day and age. So what are you talking about? Well, I'm glad you asked, very descript and somewhat passive-aggressive Atlas fan. Well, today we're actually not talking about Persona 5 Scramble. I am talking about Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Yes, the follow-up to not only Hyrule Warriors, but also the prequel to Breath of the Wild. Now, as many of you may know, I have been a very big fan of Koei Tecmo, as well as their work with Persona 5 Scramble when I imported the game back in February. The game was such a blast in terms of how it evolved and grew the Warriors franchise in terms of not only what they could do as spin-offs, but what they could do with series people never really thought about, especially by taking so many aspects of Persona 5 and making them work into Scramble. So, when Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity got announced back in September, I could not have been happier. I noticed something when I saw the release date was coming out November 20th, 2020. And one of the biggest takeaways from that was that we are still in the West not getting Persona 5 Scramble for quite some time, it seems, let alone the game being officially announced. So for this video, I wanted to try something a little bit different. I came up with 5 reasons why I think Age of Calamity is going to be not only the bigger, but better game compared to Persona 5 Scramble. So, let's start things off with number 5. This game, Age of Calamity specifically, is coming off the legacy of not only Hyrule Warriors Legends, and Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, this is also coming off of the insane popularity for Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now, as I referred to at the beginning of this video, if you remember 2017, Persona 5 was huge, Nier was huge, Yakuza 0 was huge, but one of the even bigger titles out of that year, undeniably, was Breath of the Wild. It captivated the entire world coming out of the same day on Switch as well as Wii U, and ever since launch, people have just been so hungry for anything Breath of the Wild, hence why all the excitement for the sequel and now leading into Age of Calamity. So, if you don't know, Age of Calamity is basically a sort of sequel to Hyrule Warriors, but is actually a proper prequel to Breath of the Wild. So while Persona 5 Scramble had a lot of excitement in terms of it's basically Persona 5 2 in terms of its timeline, I think just comparing in terms of excitement, in terms of finding a follow-up for, do you want to learn more about the story of Persona 5, or do you want to learn more about the story in Breath of the Wild? And for me, it's just hands down, like, I fell in love with that world, I want to see what happened 100 years ago, and I'm just through all the trailers getting so excited, learning about the world as well as the cast and the story, let alone seeing how all the characters interact with each other. Now, next up, number 4. This game is going to actually learn from all the development process of Persona 5 Scramble. Now, what I mean by that is obviously Koei Tecmo is this massive studio. They do dozens and dozens of different games all at the same time. Like just right now, for example, they're not only working on Age of Calamity, they're also working on Dynasty Warriors 9 Empires, and I'm sure a whole bunch of other titles that I've forgotten about. But what's so interesting about this is if you look at the gameplay of Age of Calamity, it is so apparent that yes, it's taking a lot of what made Breath of the Wild so special, but it's also melding those elements that it learned from Scramble. The wider open arenas, the more emphasis on platforming and traversal, there's wall jumping, there's paragliding now. The characters just flow a lot faster and smoother, and it's very apparent that they've learned a lot of the tricks from Scramble. Looking at how you do long-distance attacks, it's very similar to how you do skill attacks in Scramble, and I could not be more excited, because while looking at Scramble and Age of Calamity, you might think, oh yes, it's another Dynasty Warriors game. If you actually dig deep and compare it to, say, something like even Dynasty Warriors 8, and less so 9, obviously, but these games just evolve the formula and kind of break them down into something familiar while also exploring all of these new elements with larger maps, bigger move sets, probably smaller character rosters, but if Hyrule Warriors, the original one, has shown us anything, having a smaller roster lets you have so much greater character diversity. And I think one of the benefits of these games is learning these characters, leveling them up, getting their weapons maxed out, and just kind of perfecting them all however you want to play, which is such an awesome freedom you can only really get in these Warrior games. Alright, number 3. Better communication from the publisher. Now, obviously, Koei Tecmo is developing both Scramble and Age of Calamity, but one of the biggest headaches Atlas fans have had over the past 500 plus days is that Scramble was announced back in April 2019, and in October 2020, as I'm recording this, Atlas West has still not officially announced the game for seemingly no reason, and if they have one, they've somehow kept it to themselves, which, if anything, just makes them look worse for fans. Now, obviously I know comparing Atlas and Nintendo is apples to oranges, but still, look at how Nintendo has handled the situation with Age of Calamity. It got a worldwide announcement in terms of September with the reveal trailer, and they've just been giving us trailer, gameplay. We already have, I think, over like 35 minutes of gameplay I've been showing in this video, of extensively showing off the game at TGS, and they just had a big Treehouse Direct live stream, and they've just been doing such a great job of not only showing, hey, here is something really different not only for Zelda fans, but also Hyrule Warrior fans, and I think in terms of communication, I can't think of anything they're doing wrong. They announced the game is coming out a little over 2 months from announcement trailer, which is just so perfect, especially in a year where people thought Nintendo had kind of given up on the fall. And it's so funny for me to think now that at least with Nintendo, if they can kind of keep this momentum up, it's not crazy to assume that Age of Calamity is going to be one of the best-selling Muso games of all time. And what's so funny is just look at Persona 5 Scramble. Persona 5 Scramble is only released in Asia and Japan, but what's so crazy about it is that it is already one of the best-selling Persona non-mainline titles in the whole series, which, I mean, it's right up there with the original Arena, and it's already up there with Persona Q. So those games sold almost 250,000, and considering all these markets are just open, even though this is only coming to the Switch, speaking of Age of Calamity, I think this is just hitting at such a right time, even in a post-PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X world. I just think there's going to be an audience of people who are just really, really hungry for a quality title on the Switch this year. No offense, Pikmin 3. Point number 2, and this is a really big sticking point and was one of my very few criticisms with Scramble when I played it back in February, is that Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity actually has 2-player split-screen co-op. And one of the, at least for me growing up, one of my favorite parts of playing any Muso or Warriors game was playing split screen and how much that added to the experience of playing it with my friends or playing it with my brother growing up. It was just so fun to have those experiences of just like mashing heads with people. And right now, my wife and I love playing games like either be Dynasty Warriors 8 or the original Hyrule Warriors. And it was so heartbreaking for us when we saw Dynasty Warriors 9, at least at launch, went away from split screen. I know it was added back in, but even looking at Persona 5 Scramble, I was really hoping they would find some way to involve multiplayer. They still haven't even really talked about it, but after having gone through the game, it makes a lot more sense to me, especially considering how story-heavy and kind of how they'd really have to arrange some of the maps differently to accommodate 2 players at once. But what's so funny about it, though, is when I saw Age of Calamity was so similar to Scramble, I immediately just assumed, okay, it's not going to have any co-op. Not a big deal. I've already gotten over it with Scramble. I'll just be bummed out, I guess, and pass the controller off with my wife every now and then. But then to actually have Nintendo confirm, no, this is going to be split-screen co-op, made me just so excited. And hopefully I'm not the only one here who enjoys playing these games with couch co-op. I know a lot of people probably would prefer to have online, but at least for something like this, it's just really fun to like either have your significant other or just have a friend come over and just play with you for hours on end. Because these games, you can just lose so much time playing. Okay, and my final point for this video is my largest point that I cannot stress enough of why I think Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity is just going to mop the floor with Persona 5 Scramble no matter when it comes out. And that is because this game with Age of Calamity is not only been announced at the same time worldwide, but is going to have a worldwide release. That is such a key thing, and especially as video games have been more universally connected, everyone's talking a lot more with social media. Having a game spaced out like that, especially when they're so story heavy, even in a Warriors type game like with Scramble or Age of Calamity, having even just a couple of days is tough, let alone months and months and months of silence. So by having Nintendo saying, no, this game is coming out in November for everybody, is just such a win for them. And I think just puts this smudge of, honestly, embarrassment over Atlas West of like, not only can you guys not announce this game in a timely manner, but like various companies have been showing you that not only are worldwide releases possible, but almost anyone can really make it happen. And obviously, like I said before, comparing Atlas to Nintendo in terms of scope, they're definitely not apples and oranges. But where you take a step back and look at a company in size, so Atlas is also Sega, as many of you know. Look at something like Koei Tecmo. Koei Tecmo can announce on the same day and give release dates for Japan and also the West for their giant RPG titles like the Atelier games. So Ryza 2 is coming out, and we already know when the game got announced in Japan, it was also announced in the West, and we have a release date for Japan, and we also have a release date in the West. That communication just goes back to keeping things up to date with your fans, letting them know what's going on, and not leading people to just wonder, okay, is this game canceled? When can I play it? Like, do I need to import this? Like, what's the whole situation? Whereas if you're excited for Scramble and Age of Calamity, it has got to be so easy for you to be like, let's say, okay, Scramble gets announced and it's coming out in like January. Well, you're going to have all that good press from Age of Calamity, and let's say if what I'm guessing is going to be true, that Age of Calamity will, at the end of the day, be a better game than Scramble, it's like, okay, I'm probably just going to go for the Zelda one because, A, it's basically a follow-up to Scramble, but you release Scramble later in the West. So they're pretty much just continuously shooting themselves in the foot with Scramble, which is such a shame because, like I know this video may make it seem like I'm just rubbing Atlas's face in the whole situation with Persona 5 Scramble, but it's just such a shame because, like, it's not like this is some mediocre spin-off like only some of the fans are really going to like. Like, I really loved my time with the game earlier this year. I genuinely enjoyed playing it more than I did Royal, and I really, really liked a lot of aspects of playing Persona 5 Royal. So hopefully that kind of acts as some sort of marker for you guys all to be like, I'm not just saying like Persona 5 Scramble is going to suck. I'm genuinely excited for it. I cannot wait to start playing it, hear what everyone thinks about it, and people to start playing in whatever language they're able to play in. I just wanted to really nail home the point that while I am so excited for Scramble, I am infinitely more so excited for Age of Calamity because it's just basically taking everything good that came from Scramble, and in turn, this is also kind of potentially hurting the sales in the West, which I would hate to have happen for when Scramble does finally come out, but I mean, all we can really do is wait and see. Either way, though, having a worldwide release, going back to that original last point, is just such a big deal. It is such a win, and cannot be stressed enough that, I mean, just look at something like Shin Megami Tensei 5. When that got announced as a worldwide release date, people were crazy to hear that, because that has just never been a priority at Atlas. It could be due to workflow, it could be due to how the management in the West gets assets, or just how they juggle their projects. But without that communication, all we kind of get to go off of is a lot of speculation and stuff like that. So it's funny for me to think that a company like Nintendo is somehow so much grander in size and yet so much better at communicating with their fans and letting them know what's going on. But hopefully one day all of my messages and criticisms will finally get through and not just seem like I'm some angry guy yelling in his room, and actually just trying to help improve companies that I really enjoy the products they make. Well, either way, guys, this was kind of a different video for me. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think of my 5 points. Do you agree with them? Do you disagree with them? Do you have other points you want to make? Let me know in the comments below. Please, 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 if you enjoyed this video, share it to someone you might also think would enjoy it. Also, if you haven't already, think about subscribing to the channel. Super, super helps. I am so appreciative that I was able to not only finally hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, but I also want to keep this pace up of doing more videos, more scripted content like this, talking with you guys about different subjects that are coming out through the year. I mean, just crazy to think of, like, we are almost a month away from PlayStation 5 coming out, and when the time this video comes out, a month away from the Xbox Series S and X coming out. So next gen is right around the corner. I am super, super excited. There are so many crazy games coming not only this year, over the next couple of weeks, but then looking into 2021, it is just going to be so insane. Either way, guys, once again, thank you so much for listening. See you in the comments. I will see you online. Have a good one.